Alright, so we're here back with the Nissan, and today I'm going to be trying to hopefully get the timing belt on, the VTC gears torqued, and also the springs installed and those sealed up with the new O-rings, and that's all I really have planned right now. But if we have more time, I'll go ahead and see what else I can get done. But for now, let's get started on that. So I really didn't want to have to take the intake valve covers off. Not that it'd be a huge issue, they're not really sealed or anything. So you have a few options if you want to tighten this bolt down without removing the valve covers. You can go get an oil filter wrench, a big one, and it'll wrap around the cam gear and it'll hold it in place. You may even be able to use like a belt. I may try that if this doesn't work. But what I'm going to try to do is these holes that go around the cam gear, one or maybe both, but right now this one over here is lined up with a 10mm bolt that holds on this back cover. I'm just gonna put this socket on there, and then I will torque this bolt down to 90 foot-pounds if it all works out. Appears to be a 19. Got my socket ready. This definitely does not work. Whoever suggested this. All right, I'm gonna try a belt next. Just a regular old leather belt. Hopefully will work. Feeling kind of good about this. The only problem is that I can't support the engine like I was wanting to. I felt it turn. This is so much torque to be holding onto with a belt. Oh my god. Okay, that worked, surprisingly. So we got one of them torqued down. Alright, now we have our VTC springs and O-rings right here. So we're gonna just go ahead and put the springs in here and put the covers on and tighten them down with the O-rings in place, of course. Got this idler bearing to replace as well. I'm gonna put this in here. Alright, so today's a new day. I actually didn't record it, but I have the water pipes sealed on there, new hose clamps, new silicone hoses, the tensioner, or not tensioner, but the idler bearings both on, cam gears on. I believe I recorded that. The only thing left on the front really is the water pump. So I'm going to use Scotch-Brite, clean off this surface, get all the old gasket material off, try to clean the rust off, and then I'll put the silicone on the water pump and seal it up. Alright, the water pump is on. Now it's time to put the tensioner on, which is this one stud here and these two bolts. And it goes on like this. So I'm going to put this on, I'm going to set it on the stud, and then I'll put the two bolts in that sit in these slotted holes. And then I'll start working to get the belt on. These gloves make it so hard to do anything halfway precise with your fingers. So I'm going to start working the timing belt onto here. I'm gonna try to get the crank. I'm not sure if you can tell, the dot is right here and the mark on the oil pump is right here. So we're pretty close, but we're not quite there. We're about a tooth off on the crank. Up there we're a little bit off. Over here we're way off. This whole side is about, I'd say, like 90 out. So these cams are a little bit advanced, not a whole lot. These cams are quite a bit retarded, and the crank is a little bit retarded as well. So we're just gonna try to turn the crank a little bit, and then hopefully be able to turn these enough that they'll be on time right there, and we can get the belt on. And it's pretty cool if you get an OE Nissan replacement belt. It tells you that this is the front, so this will be sitting like this, and it has these lines to indicate different sprockets, meaning if I had to assume, I would say that the dotted one is the first exhaust cam gear over there, and then it goes the intake cam next to it, and then goes over to the next intake cam, and then to the exhaust cam, and then crank is what I would assume. That's how I'm going to try to run it, and then we'll see if everything seems right. I'm going to use this rag to clamp just between my cam gears and the belt, as to not damage the paint on the cam gears and to not damage the belt by metal touching it and possibly cutting something. So I'm just going to take this rag, put it just around here, make sure the line is on the correct spot. And now that cam gear is held in the correct spot. I'm gonna do the same thing with another pair of vice grips right there. Again, line is on the dot. So that's my notch in the cam gear right there. And that's my belt coming off roughly at a tangent. So, and that's where I need to be. So I'm gonna try to pull this up. And if I pull straight out, my theory, if I pull straight out, I'm pulling straight in line with that dot at a tangent, I think it should hold it right where I need it to be. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. We're gonna see if it works. So that was pretty easy. It looks in line, and it's a little bit advanced, but as I said, these things are spring loaded. You want to be very careful. A little bit advanced is typically easier to put the belt onto. And right there, we're on the line. So again, being very careful. I'm gonna feed this belt down here to where it's just where it needs to be. It's sitting on the tensioner right now, and we're gonna move on to trying to get it onto the crank in the right spot. Now, as I said, the crank was a little bit retarded, so we're gonna try to put the bolt in and turn it just a little bit to get it about a tooth on, and then we should be good. And luckily, it is a little bit retarded, because if it was advanced, it'd be a lot harder to work with. But we're just gonna put our crank bolt in here, and then we should just be able to crank this down, turn it to where it needs to be. Whoa, that might have actually just done it by hand, which is kind of scary. But now I may actually remove these two bolts from the tensioner just to allow it to flex back a little bit more, and maybe I can get some more in on this. Worst case, there's some slack in this V up here, and these should be able to advance a little bit, give me some more slack on this side, but I'm gonna try to go ahead and just put this on. Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna have to remove the bolts from here. So that came back a little bit. See if that was enough. The line is a tooth off. So I need some more slack on this side. I could give this one good hit with the impact, and then I could probably wrench it back and get it on there. That's where we need to be. I'm just pulling on the tensioner, kind of manually tension it so I don't lose my spot. So we're on the crank. Tensioner bolts are in. So now I'm going to remove these. So I'm on all 5 sprockets correctly. All in all, it looks like I'm advanced about a tooth maybe on the timing covers. That's why they really don't recommend you follow the timing covers. Not the covers, but the backing plates. They have these dots. They're not really 100% accurate. So if you have a belt that comes with lines, use those. If you don't have a belt with lines, you have to count the teeth between each one of these, and it's a huge pain. So if you can, just run it like this and call it good. So the next thing I have to do is there's a bolt right here on the tensioner, and you take that out and that releases the hydraulic action. Then you turn it over a few times. You see where it's sitting at, and I believe you set it back at TDC. If it's correctly tensioned, it will be 4 millimeters. So you measure that 4 millimeters by measuring between the tensioner housing right there, the hydraulic housing, and then this arm right here. It kind of looks like a set of calipers. And what you do is take like a 4 millimeter Allen key, and you put it between there. And if it fits pretty nice, you can't rotate the Allen key. Then it's 4 millimeters, and you set it. But how you adjust to get to that 4 millimeters is by using these slotted bolts, loosening them, and then you take a pry bar and pry against this bracket and the back of the tensioner, and that pushes it either way whenever you got hydraulic stuff going. Because otherwise you really can't move this by hand. You have to use a big pry bar or something to get to rotate, because there's a lot of pressure in that hydraulic cylinder. And since this is on an engine stand that I really don't trust, I'm going to do all my rotations pulling it upwards. Literally perfect. So I should be good now just to put my belt spacer on, put my timing cover on, and then call it good. Alright, now I'm going to start connecting the harness, starting at the top near the plenum. And now I already have this harness tucked, so it's going to be different than what yours may be, or what most people are, because I did it myself. And I didn't make a video about it. I should have, but I just wanted to get it done, and it is such a time-consuming thing that it's just awful. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. So I get the VG over here looking all pretty. Only one problem I found out so far, and it's if I pull this off and I go to this plenum bolt, we got some threads that are pulled out with the bolt. So I'm gonna have to helicoil this or something like that, some sort of thread repair method. Probably helicoil, I don't know what's most accessible to me. There's Time-Cert, helicoil. At Honda, they kind of push Time-Certs a lot. I don't really know much about them, never had to do one, but I know helicoils are pretty common, so that's probably what I'm end up doing with this. It's just kind of shitty I have to get into the lower intake to do. Not really a problem though with all the deletes I've done. The plenum is literally just these bolts and it comes off with the electrical connectors on the back and the ones on the throttle position sensor. So it's really not a problem to get off, but I just don't like doing a thread repair that far down. It's something I'd rather do on like an aesthetic piece if I had to, not really an intake. But you know, it is what it is. I'll have to do what I have to do. So I think that's probably where I'm going to stop tonight. And yeah.